Okay, stop, because it's time for learning together. Okay, in all seriousness, y'all, I want to take a moment to talk about a story that's been circulating.
Annette Hubble wrote a one-woman show. She portrays historical figures, white like herself and black.
It never occurred to me that might even be an issue.
A white woman is suing a library after they canceled her one-woman show. In her show, she portrays several historical figures, including black women like Harriet Tubman and McLeod Bethune. And I think this is such a great learning experience because I often get questions from interpreters who do reenactments. The library asked her to switch out those rules and said it wasn't appropriate for a white woman to portray black historical figures in this context.
A couple weeks before the show, they asked Hubble to swap out Bethune and Tubman for white characters.
And I said, why? And she said, because it's not appropriate for you to be doing this. You're a white woman. And I said, oh, no. You don't understand. I'm honoring these women. And she said, that doesn't matter. And I said, you mean I'm only to perform women whose stories of bravery and courage that should be told if they're white? And she said, that's pretty much it. So I'm not getting it. So I said, well, tell me how this is different from the Hamilton play.
And she refused, and the performance was canceled. Now she is filing a lawsuit. I know that for a lot of people, especially our white community members who are well-intentioned, this can probably seem confusing. She said she was honoring these women, and she even asked how this was any different from like Hamilton. So I want to take a moment and talk about why this is so much more of a layered issue than it might seem on the surface. This isn't about saying white people can't care about, celebrate, or uplift black historical figures. And it's not about saying that white people can't talk about race or history or equity. It's about how that is done and being honest about the power dynamics that we bring with us when we do this type of stuff. Harriet Tubman was enslaved by white people. McLeod Bethune spent her life fighting for equal rights that were denied to her because of systems created and upheld by whiteness. And their stories are sacred, and telling them, especially embodying them without being part of the communities that carry those legacies, can unintentionally feel like taking something rather than honoring it. Representation isn't about performance, it's about proximity, lived experience in the space that we take up. It's about who gets to tell which stories and why those decisions matter. And when people are referencing Hamilton, it's important to understand what that production was actually doing, because it casts intentionally flip the script, right? Putting the people of color in roles of the white founding fathers. And that wasn't done lightly. It was a deliberate choice to reclaim space in stories that have historically excluded black and brown people. It was a challenge to the norm. And it wasn't just about who could act. It was about power, access, and the rewriting of a narrative ownership. And that's very different from a white person performing the life of someone who lived under the weight of white supremacy, especially if that person hasn't engaged deeply with the community, the context, or the ongoing harm that can come from reenacting trauma without consent or accountability.
We need to do something about this.
Hubble says he convinced her to sue. Pacific Legal Foundation says it fights for individual liberties. It's filed suits against implicit bias training, race quotas for licensing boards, and programs meant to close racial opportunity gaps.
Now, this lady has partnered with the very law firm who is actively fighting against efforts to close racial opportunity gaps. And that kind of thing, right, underscores the things that people like McLeod Bethune and Harriet Tubman were fighting to dismantle. And so that adds another layer that makes the whole situation seem out of step with the idea of honoring these women. And listen, I don't really think this woman set out to cause harm. Like, I really don't. I think, like a lot of people, she probably had good intentions, but impact matters more than intention. And now she's centering herself with very little understanding of the impacts. So I want to invite folks, especially, our white community members, to sit with this question. Just because I can do something, should I? Because sometimes honoring someone means stepping back. Sometimes it means listening instead of speaking, supporting instead of leading, or amplifying others instead of putting ourselves at the center. And that doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that we're all learning to move differently in a world where not everyone has been given equal space. So I want to thank you for taking time to reflect with me. And remember, this isn't about guilt, it's about growth, and we all have room to grow.